Welcome back to BLOCKTV. It's time now for chain breakers. Do you want your blockchain analyzed? Of course you do, and you know who to turn to. I'm talking, of course, about Chainalysis, the premier company in blockchain data and analysis tools who've continued their fine work developing new tools to better understand the blockchain space. I speak now with John Dempsey, VP of Product at Chainalysis. John, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Asher.
All right, so to kick things off, you guys have recently launched a new product. Everyone knows KYC, but what can you tell us about KYT?
Yeah, so KYT is Know Your Transaction. And so essentially, global monetary regulation when it comes to cryptocurrency have many of the same rules applied as the traditional financial ecosystem. And with that comes the need to monitor transactions for money laundering and other illicit activity. And so essentially what Chainalysis does is identifies all the services that are transacting, good ones and bad ones, and allows you to know where your transactions are coming from. Is it an exchange or is it a darknet market?
Okay, so I mean, what power does that give you? Let's talk about that sort of real world application, as it were. What sort of companies are going to want to use that information, and in what manner can it be used from a regulatory standpoint, from a compliance, anti-money laundering? How does this apply on the ground in the real world situations?
Sure, so any cryptocurrency exchange where you're converting fiat dollars into cryptocurrency is regulated by these global bodies. So G20 or FATF in the US, it's FinCEN and Treasury. And all of these have obligations as they're moving money in and out of the financial ecosystem to essentially ensure that money is not being laundered using Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies.
A solution like KYT, I got to wonder, you mentioned FATF there, the Financial Action Task Force. Now they, earlier in the year, passed the requirement that crypto exchanges and companies that want to be compliant are going to have to abide by what's known as the travel rule, which allows, would require exchanges to understand where the money's coming from, where it's moving to, etc., much like the SWIFT system. Would this system that you guys have here help to facilitate compliance with those new regulatory frameworks?
Not entirely. So Chainalysis doesn't touch PII. We don't own personally identifiable information. Mm-hmm. The travel rule requires that you're capturing both the person who is sending the money and who is the beneficiary on the other side. So this would be in complement to something like KYT. You would need to include this information as a regulated money service business.
Okay. Now, I want to understand something as well. I mean, talking about bad actors in the field, there's a lot of debate that goes on from those inside the sort of crypto sphere who maintain that there aren't that many bad actors really at play here, that most cryptocurrency transactions are being done by legitimate actors seeking to utilize this new technological financial innovation. What sort of bad actors do you at Chainalysis see taking part in the field, and would you say that they're a large representative group, or is this a niche issue that needs to be dealt with?
Yeah, so as an overall percentage, illicit activity has declined, but as cryptocurrency volume has increased, the numbers are still quite high. And so what we're still seeing is darknet markets still exist. As soon as one gets shut down, another one springs up. We've seen a few examples. Hacks, I think, have been some of the largest over the last year. You may have seen Binance was hacked for $40 million over the last year, the largest exchange globally. Ransomware continues to be on the rise. You notice local police forces and hospitals and other critical infrastructure get hacked, and money is demanded in cryptocurrency. And so we're still seeing bad actors use this as an effective means in order to collect and cash out illicit funds.
Okay, and I mean, of course, the concern of bad actors, while a retail concern, at the same time, from a compliance standpoint, very much an issue for potential institutional players wanting to get into the field. I suppose I wonder, working with this new tool that you guys have, are you helping to entice some of those institutional players into the market? And if so, sort of what's the response been from an institutional perspective to a new tool such as this one?
Yeah, that's a great point. So we actually have a third product launching this fall that we call the Industry Explorer, and it's built specifically for traditional financial institutions to understand their cryptocurrency risk. So one use case is many of these banks actually want to bank cryptocurrency business, but to do so, they need to ensure that they are not being exposed to risk. And so they use these tools to basically see how is that exchange doing over time with their own anti-money laundering programs.
And does the infrastructure exist, or rather the ecosystem developed enough to be able to handle those institutional players? I mean, there you guys are working at the forefront of blockchain analysis, and I just suppose I wonder. Many would say at 10 years old, this whole market asset category is simply too new and too undeveloped, too unsophisticated. Would you agree with that sentiment, or do you think there is enough there to be able to bring those institutional players, whether we're talking about banks, funds, the larger scale players into the market safely yet?
Yeah, when we look at larger scale players, some of the issues that need to be resolved are outside of Chainalysis, things like custody and security. And I think a lot of institutional investors are looking for some of the products that they typically enjoy, things like futures and derivatives. And so I think they're going to wait for these types of products to come on market.
Okay, but from a sort of regulatory, analytics standpoint, do you think that it's there? In terms of inside your guys' wheelhouse, do you think that there's enough there to work with?
Within our wheelhouse, regulation has kept up, and it is a safe place for institutions to play, and we can very easily spot who are the good and bad actors from the business side, from the exchange side.
Okay, and I want to flip that now, of course. Obviously, talking about institutional players, they want access, they want information, they want to know what's happening. But from an individual perspective, I suppose a tool like this new KYT tool, are there any issues regarding privacy concerns for individuals, holding access to certain wallets or whatnot? Is this something that could potentially impact on those who are looking to maintain a certain degree of privacy while utilizing cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, so we don't track private wallets or capture PII. Over 90% of all Bitcoin ends up being held and exchanged within those exchanges. So the exchanges themselves hold the private keys and are transferring funds. In terms of privacy, I think those who are interested in maintaining their anonymity do have access to privacy coins like Monero and Zcash. They will move money through things like mixers, which are used to tumble funds together. So there are tools at their disposal to kind of evade or move around these controls.
Mm-hmm. And can you address, I noted in your sort of release regarding the KYT technology, the new tool, I was reading up on it, and there was one thing that was addressed repeatedly was the fewer false positives. Can you talk about how your process leads to less false positives in terms of finding bad actors using this KYT policy, and why that would be such a problem for other players and other approaches that are conducted?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you have tools like ours, you really need to make sure that you're identifying wallet addresses correctly, because these can lead to false subpoenas, false arrests, if your information isn't correct. And so our technology, what we're doing is we're looking for the wallet infrastructure. We're trying to identify which wallets are owned by the same person. So a lot of companies talk about, well, we use machine learning, we use AI. These are probabilistic techniques where you're basically guessing that these wallets are controlled by the same entity. We do none of that. So everything we do is deterministic. Everything we do has an audit trail, and we can go back and show screenshots and evidence of us interacting with these services. We always provide proof.
Important to have that higher standard of proof and development. And as well, before I let you go, John, any other interesting things coming down the pipeline? Anything we should be watching out for in the near future?
Yeah, I think we're just most excited for the launch of alerts within KYT. What we've had most of the requests from our customers for is to be able to act in real time. So when you have something like a hack or a new terror address is identified, that immediately these funds can get flagged and these institutions can take action.
All right, certainly an important step and development for the sphere, dealing with some of those anti-money laundering issues, those KYC and now KYT principles, always very important. John Dempsey, VP for Product at Chainalysis, I want to thank you so much for joining us on BLOCKTV and breaking down these new developments and processes that are helping to grow the sphere. In the meantime, please stay with us at blocktv.com. I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Thanks for watching.
news and updates, follow us on Twitter.